Hello. Today I want to talk about one of the leading factors regarding the division in America today, the American primaries. I want to discuss the primaries and the problems that we don't even realize they cause. I'm Mike. This is The Other Side. One of the biggest problems we see in America today is the problems of political division. That is to say, all the problems that we see of right versus left, conservatives versus liberals, Republicans versus Democrats, and everything that entails. For example, we see extremist groups on both sides. Conservative extremist groups have even made FBI's top lists of, worst terrorism threats in America. We have seen groups like Black Lives Matter call for the deaths of white people. Yes, that's not generally their stance on it, but we have seen those members call for that kind of extremism. And we see states and state representatives always voting down party lines of their represented state, even though in all reality, most states are some shade of purple, not red or blue, as we would be led to think. We have just about every issue out there that causes division in our country. We have abortion, whether you should be able to take a life in order to save a life, or for whatever reason. We have the gun control debate, whether people should be completely outlawed from having guns or whether everyone should have guns. There's the medical debate and how to handle the current failing medical system in America. There are gay rights and whether or not the rights of a gay individual should trump the rights of a religious individual. We have calls into question regarding science. I mean, we're talking from the most basic level. We're talking whether vaccines work, whether evolution is an actual thing, whether the earth is round or flat. Even the most basic points of science are now in contention, and it's greatly divided by the political parties. And of course, we have religion. How far our religion beliefs should go, how far our rights in regards to religion are concerned. But all of these matters are really trifle compared to some of the bigger issues that this division has been causing. We can see it easily on social media. We see libtards and Republicans. We see people just constantly insulting each other, even death threats, saying all liberals should be killed off, all conservatives should be killed off. It's not limited to just politics. We also have this in religion as well. Like I said, Christians saying atheists should be killed, Muslims trying to kill off anyone that's not them. Now, I'm not saying that these are the general populace, and quite to the contrary, I'm trying to say that most people aren't like this. Most people aren't so divided about their politics and their religion. Most people don't think that everyone should be killed off if they don't completely agree with you, or that they should go to a completely different country. That's not how most people think, but that is what we see in the social media. That's what we see in the regular media. That's what we see everywhere because, well, let's be honest, controversy sells. And we see this controversy growing more and more in our country because we start finding ourselves in these echo chambers that just are filled with people who already agree with the things that we agree with. So rather than having any kind of healthy dispute and questioning what it is we believe, we sit here and we talk to the others that are thinking similar to us, and maybe they're thinking a little bit more extreme than we are. But because their points align with our points, we start listening more and more to them, and it starts getting more and more extreme within our minds as well. We're listening to the people that agree with us and not the ones that don't agree with us. If anyone doesn't agree with us, we consider them ignorant, unpatriotic. They're an illness to the country. Bottom line, we refuse to listen to anything that disputes against our party stance. And this causes us to share things that align with our already preconceived notions. News articles that maybe aren't quite true, but they sound good. They sound like what we want to hear. Whether they're saying what we want to hear or maligning what someone else had said, that we think that that's what they would have said. And it's an increase to false and misleading news. Let's be honest. We don't have as many differences as we like to think. We're not as far apart from each other as we lead ourselves to believe. Look at some of the issues I had mentioned earlier and think about how we don't align, and yet maybe we align a little bit more than we realize. The idea of abortion. Now that's probably one of the most divisive ones out there because it's so extreme. The idea that one person can kill a baby and another person doesn't like that. It makes sense. But I can promise you, no one involved in that equation is just thinking that, oh, I want this child gone. I just want it to be dead. No, it's much deeper issues that we're not even considering about. We don't think about when we oppose those kinds of things. We can find a middle ground in this kind of issue, and for the most part, we have. We've agreed that if you are there for the first trimester and you decide you wanted to abort your child at the first trimester, okay, that's fine. But anything after that, it starts to be too much. We've generally come to an agreement on this. It's a nice middle ground. Yes, it still leaves some people on both sides unhappy, and yes, there are certain exceptions in both directions that need to be considered. But if we continue to listen to our political leaders, if we continue to listen to our echo chambers, we'll sit here and start to think that neither compromise is good. And what we really want to do is just have our side completely listened to and not the other side in any kind of way. Let's look at the gun control debate. If we were to listen to the extremes on both sides, one side says completely get rid of the guns. The other side is actually, I have heard arguments of people saying we should just allow anyone and everyone to have guns regardless of their history, regardless of their mental health, regardless of anything. Truth of the matter is, our current gun laws are sufficient. They just need a little bit more enforcement. Now, we can sit there and say that we have more gun deaths per capita than just about any other, especially any other first world country, and that's a true fact. But we have to look honestly at what is causing that, what the problem is there. And it's not just the presence of guns. There are several countries that have guns that don't have the problems that we have. So it can be done. We need to figure out what's going on. Is it a mental health issue? Yes, of course there's a mental health problem, but there is also the access to guns and the level of responsibility that we have to hold to those gun owners that are ultimately responsible for the deaths that follow. Each one of these subjects I could do an entire video on, but I'm just kind of like glossing over them to show that yes, there is some middle ground that we can find here, that we can pull from each other and work together to build this compromise. We have a problem with our education system. A lot of the colleges are vastly overcharging. It's hard to get ahead. It's hard to even keep up. We definitely have acknowledged that college is more necessary in today's society, but also a lot harder to get than it's ever been before. So we're looking at solutions to that. And I believe that both sides can agree that the college problem is a problem. Now, some people sit there and believe that there's other problems attached to that, such as, a bunch of political influence in the classes, but that's a different issue that could still be somehow related and addressed by the rest of this solution that we hope to cause. So on the liberal side for education, we want to sit here and say wipe all student loan debt and make college education free for everyone, all across the board, government paid for, bam, done. Obviously on the conservative side, they're sitting there saying that's ridiculous. Why would we pay for all that? I don't even benefit from it. And the truth of the matter is both sides are ridiculous. You do benefit from it. However, paying off everyone's college education, regardless of whether they pass, fail, whatever they do, is impractical. It's not something that we can do. But there is some middle ground conversation that can be had there. We can have government regulation over how much colleges can charge for tuition. We can have maybe early colleges paid for, your first 2 years. Junior colleges and trade schools could be college paid for by the government. Maybe one of the solutions for the other problem is no college can get paid for by the government if that college is responsible for any sort of political pandering. Similar conversations can be had about the medical field. How we're being completely overcharged, how everything is ridiculous, how if I have any kind of health problem, I could end up either losing my life or losing my house, and I have to make a choice between the two. In regards to religion, one thing any religion that's trying to post out any kind of rights needs to consider is if you want rights for your religion, you need to make sure that those same rights apply to other religions as well. If you don't want Muslims praying in school, then don't expect you to be able to pray in school. Now, of course, no one is sitting there suggesting that Muslims can't pray in school. At the same time, no one is really suggesting that Christians can't pray in the school. But Christians are looking for prayer led in the classrooms. But of course, they would have a severe problem if there was an Islamic prayer that was led in the classroom or a satanic prayer that was led in the classroom. The whole point of the satanic church at this point is just to show that if you want this, then we also get it. And if you don't want us to have it, then maybe you shouldn't be fighting for it yourself. We have to understand that our rights go for all people, not just for our own personal benefit, not just for what we want to do. And that seems to be a thing that we really forget. You know, we're all about making sure that I'm able to have any kind of rights I want, but if another person is against my beliefs, then they need to not have those same rights. And if I'm being honest, we kind of see that on both sides of the aisle. We have to understand that sometimes free speech means that someone's going to say something that we don't like, that we don't want to hear. And we also have to be able to take responsibility for ourselves and say, that's not something I want to hear. That's not something I want to associate with. That's not something I want to deal with. And just turn the other way. The other side of that, of course, is that we have to understand that just because we have free speech doesn't mean that we're completely free from any and all consequences. If you are saying things that are not in line with your company's philosophy, they may have the right to terminate your employment. Now we can start getting into the question of whether or not a company should be able to have any sort of say in what you say after business hours, but that's on a case-by-case basis. So getting back to the original point, what do the primaries have to do with any of this? It's almost time to vote for the president. And as I'm recording this, we are less than a week away from voting in the Democratic primaries. But this doesn't just apply for this year. This isn't just a one-time thing. This is a video that would apply for literally any year that we have voted for the president, because, let's be honest, the Congress doesn't actually have primaries, so that's not something you have to worry about there. During this time, we see the biggest increase of division, while each side tries to nominate the person that most aligns with the extremist factions of their party. And here, we start to see the two sides really start to push the differences between them. And ultimately, we see elected the person that best represents the party that they're being nominated for, rather than someone that might best represent America as a whole, which would probably be someone that's somewhere in the middle of those two different people. Because of this, we can never have that middle ground. That person elected who can best represent both sides. That person who can really work to find that compromise between the division. Instead, we get two candidates that we have to choose from that each represent their most extremist views. And then we wonder why we have these problems. So what is it we can take from this? Well, voting third party doesn't work. Ultimately, a third party candidate will always be leaning more one way or the other, and it'll just take votes from one of the other two candidates. So since a third party candidate's not going to work, what we need to do is focus more on the moderates within the two parties that we have. Instead of voting for all of the most extreme that will fight for our rights, or fight for whatever our party platform is, we need a candidate that's going to fight more for the middle aisle, that moderation. Of course, none of us want to do that because we all want to push our agendas, but as we continue to push our agendas more and more, it keeps going more and more extreme, and that's part of the problem that we're dealing with here. George Bush Jr. ended up saying he said that he was a uniter, not a divider, which wasn't really true, but that is what we need. We need someone who's willing to work across the aisles, work to find that compromise, that moderation. We need to quit thinking that compromise is the same as selling out. If our primaries have to be a thing, and clearly they're not going away anytime soon, we need to find a way to make this work across the aisle. We need to find a way to end this extremist division. And not just the extremist division, but any kind of division. You know, whether it's between atheists and the religious, or, you know, the different religions, the abortionists and the pro-lifers, the guns, pro and anti, you know, all the different categories that we have problems with today. We need to find reasonable, rational compromises, not just vote for whoever is going to stick to our party, because the more we find ourselves divided, as one of our founding fathers had said, united we stand, divided we fall. I would rather see our country stand on our compromise than to fall in our extremism. I'm Mike. This has been The Other Side.